In every Nigerian university, there are two kinds of students: those who struggle to make it honestly, and those who decide to bend the rules. But behind every choice lies a story of pressure, dreams, and survival. Juka and Emeka shared the same hostel room, the same hopes, the same fears. Juka was bright but restless, the kind who wanted to change his life fast. Emeka was calm, patient, and believed in the long road of hard work. They both came from humble homes, families that did everything to put them through school. Chuka's father was a retired civil servant, his mother a small trader who sold fabrics at the market. Every semester, they borrowed money to pay his fees. Emeka's parents weren't rich either, but they valued integrity above all else. His father would always say, "Slow money still feeds," and Emeka carried that lesson in his heart. But the campus had its own rules. Everywhere they looked, there were boys driving cars worth millions, wearing designer clothes, and flashing wads of cash at parties. Instagram was full of students showing off new phones and weekend getaways. Success looked easy, and those without money looked invisible. The pressure was silent, but heavy. Chuka began to wonder why he was struggling when others his age were already living large. He scrolled through social media and saw his classmates in clubs, surrounded by girls and champagne bottles. He told himself, "I'm not lazy, I just need an opportunity." He didn't know that this line of thought was where temptation begins. One night, at a small off-campus party, a friend whispered to him, "Guy, you still they do legit hustle? You go tire. Come make I show you road." The words sounded simple, harmless. He heard phrases like online business, foreign deals, clients. To Chuka, it didn't sound like crime. It sounded like the shortcut he had been searching for. He tried to tell Emeka about it the next day. "Bro, not every shortcut is bad. Some people are just smart." Emeka shook his head. "Sharp or not, wrong is still wrong. You may win now, but you'll pay later." But the seed had already been planted. Emeka spent his nights learning programming in the computer lab, taking small freelance jobs that barely covered his feeding money. Chuka spent his nights on chat apps, talking to foreigners, learning scripts, and trying to make clients fall in love. Slowly, they began to drift apart. By the end of the semester, their lives looked completely different. Emeka still struggled, but his conscience was clear. Chuka had money, new clothes, new shoes, even a new phone. But his peace was gone. He told himself it was only temporary, that once he made enough, he would stop. But greed doesn't stop. It only grows. Emeka watched his roommate change before his eyes. He was no longer the same boy who once complained about gaudy and unpaid school fees. Now, Chuka walked with confidence, carried expensive perfumes, and spoke like someone above his peers. And in a world that worships money, nobody questioned where it came from. One morning, as Chuka stood before the mirror adjusting a gold chain, Emeka looked him quietly and said, "Na saw temptation dey start." Quietly, like a joke. He didn't reply. He just smiled and walked out, the scent of his designer perfume lingering behind him. From that day, the friendship changed. The line between survival and sin grew thinner, and both young men were about to learn what life does to those who choose different roads. In Nigeria's universities, dreams are not equal. Some grow slow and honest, others grow fast, but on broken roots. For Chuka and Emeka, the line had just been drawn, and only time would show what it would cost. The second year came with new faces, new energy, and new temptations. By now, Chuka had fully crossed over. He no longer called it online hustle. He called it work. He had learned the language: clients, pickers, drops, VPN. The boy who once struggled to buy food now owned 2 phones and a second-hand Toyota Corolla. He told himself it was just survival, not evil. After all, The government stole more every day and nobody called them out. So why should a poor student feel guilty for hustling a white man online? That was the lie that kept him going. Chuka started moving with a new crowd, loud, confident boys who wore fake designer brands and treated everyone else like they didn't exist. They laughed at broke students, bragged about buying drinks for the entire club, and promised to blow anyone who followed their path. The attention was addictive. Even lecturers treated them differently, afraid of their influence and money. Meanwhile, Emeka was still on his slow grind. He got a small internship at a tech startup, earning barely enough to survive. He spent nights working on coding projects, sleeping just a few hours before class. Sometimes he looked at Chuka's life and felt a sting of envy, but he kept reminding himself of his father's words, "Quick money burns fast. Slow money builds forever." The campus had changed. Girls who once shared jokes with Emeka in class now scrolled past his messages. They wanted the big boys, the ones who could afford wigs, phones, and weekend getaways. A new dating culture was born, one built on transactions and image. Love became a luxury, respect became a currency, and honesty became boring. At parties, Chuka was a king. Everyone wanted to be near him. He threw cash in the air, poured drinks, and danced like someone who had conquered life. But when the music stopped, silence hit harder. He began to notice that his friends only came around when he had money. The girls who praised him today would disappear tomorrow if the cash slowed down. Sometimes guilt crept in. He'd stare at his screen, watching the face of a woman he was scamming, a kind, lonely woman who trusted his lies. Her messages felt too real, too human. He tried to shake off the feeling, but it stayed with him. He had become good at pretending, and that scared him. Emeka, on the other hand, was learning patience. He started teaching tech tutorials to other students, making a little more money. He wasn't rich, but he was building something real, a reputation. People began to know him for his consistency, not his possessions. He didn't have the flashy lifestyle, but he slept peacefully every night. One afternoon, he saw Chuka sitting alone by the school gate, eyes tired, phone in hand. Emeka sat beside him quietly. "Long day?" he asked. Chuka forced a smile. "Normal hustle." They sat in silence for a while, watching students pass by. Then Emeka said softly, "You know, one day, this thing might catch up to you." Chuka didn't reply. He just stared at the road and said, "Bro, in this country, if you don't find your way, you'll drown." Weeks later, campus security raided a nearby hostel after rumors of internet fraud. Several students were arrested. Chuka wasn't among them, but one of his close friends was taken away. That night, he couldn't sleep. He imagined the sirens, the handcuffs, the shame. He swore to himself he would quit soon, but the money kept calling. The contrast between the two friends grew clearer. Emeka began to see his small efforts pay off. A recommendation letter, a job offer, a new laptop from his internship savings. He wasn't rich, but he was growing inch by inch. Chuka was growing too, but in a different direction. Fame without peace, wealth without roots. As graduation approached, both young men looked at life differently. Emeka still believed in hard work and slow progress. Chuka believed the world only respected results, no matter how they came. He had forgotten who he used to be. One night, as they both sat outside their hostel, watching the stars, Emeka said quietly, "Sometimes I envy your life, but I know I couldn't live it." Chuka chuckled and said, "And sometimes I envy yours, bro. You actually sleep well." They laughed, but the laughter felt heavy. Two young men, two choices, and two destinies slowly forming under the same night sky. The next chapter of their lives was waiting, the real world, beyond the campus gates. And out there, truth always collects its debt. Graduation came faster than either of them expected. 4 years of struggle, laughter, and choices finally ended with a handshake and a certificate. But what waited outside the school gates was not a celebration. It was reality. Chuka's final year was a blur of parties, late nights, and half-finished assignments. He graduated, barely, with an average grade and a wallet that still looked heavy. He didn't care about grades anymore. He believed money would open every door. And for a while, it did. After school, he moved to Lagos, the city of dreams and deceit. He rented a small apartment in Lekki, surrounded by people who lived for appearance. He joined new circles, louder, richer, and far more dangerous. Every night was a blur of music, champagne, and plans for the next big hit. He was living fast, and he felt untouchable. Meanwhile, Emeka took a different path. He had no car, no designer shoes, and no savings worth bragging about. He moved to Ikeja, sharing a small apartment with two friends. He got a job as a junior web developer in a local tech company. The pay was small, but it was honest. Every month, he saved a little, learning how to manage, plan, and grow. Life was slow for Emeka, painfully slow. Some of his friends were already flaunting their success while he was still calculating bus fare. But he reminded himself every morning, what comes slow stays longer. That was his comfort. And deep down, he knew it was true. Chuka's world, however, began to shake. The people he trusted in the game started disappearing. Some arrested, some gone without a trace. The EFCC raids became frequent. The news filled with stories of Yahoo boys paraded on camera. He would wake up in the middle of the night sweating, imagining sirens outside his window. Still, he couldn't stop. The lifestyle was too addictive, the respect too sweet, the attention too loud. He bought a Mercedes, threw big parties, and changed girlfriends like clothes. But his happiness faded as fast as the music. He began to feel lonely, surrounded by people who only came when money was flowing. The emptiness grew louder than the laughter. Even the girls who once adored him now whispered behind his back, stories of his fraud, his arrogance, his fall. One evening, he received a message from Emeka. "Bro, how's life?" He smiled weakly and typed, "I'm good, man, just living." But deep down, he knew he wasn't living. He was surviving. Emeka, on the other hand, was finally seeing light. After 2 years in his company, he got promoted. He began freelancing online, this time legally, building websites for clients abroad. He didn't have millions, but his name was clean. He paid his rent, sent money to his parents, and still slept peacefully at night. He sometimes thought of Chuka and wondered if his friend ever found peace. He wanted to reach out, but pride and distance kept them apart. Then, one morning, while scrolling through social media, he saw a story trending. A young man arrested in Lagos for internet fraud, his face blurred but his car recognizable. It was Chuka's Mercedes. Emeka froze. He read the comments, each one filled with mockery and disgust. The same people who once cheered Chuka's lifestyle now laughed at his downfall. It was a brutal reminder that fame built on lies always ends in shame. That night, Emeka sat alone in his small apartment, the city lights reflecting through the window. He whispered to himself, "Slow growth still wins." He wasn't rich, but he was free. He wasn't famous, but he was respected. And that was worth more than gold. Months passed. Chuka's case dragged through court. His family, once proud, now hid from neighbors. His girlfriend left. His friends vanished. The same society that once praised him now called him a disgrace. He finally understood. The world loves success, but it never stands beside failure. And Emeka's journey continued upward. He started his own small tech company, mentoring students who wanted to learn programming. When he spoke at seminars, he always told his story without naming names. He would say, "Patience may look slow, but it builds something no fast money can buy: peace." In the end, both men got what they chased. Chuka got money, fame, and a moment of glory, then lost it all. Emeka got patience, progress, and peace, and kept them all. Two friends, two roads, two destinies. And as life always proves, the path you choose in your 20s can echo for the rest of your life. 5 years later, the world had changed. And so had they. The boys who once shared a small hostel room were now men, living the consequences of their choices. Emeka had built a quiet life. His tech company, though small, was stable. He had a handful of staff, young people who believed in hard work and skill. He trained them with patience, teaching not just code, but character. His office was modest, no marble floors, no gold chairs, but it had peace. And peace, he learned, was the most expensive luxury of all. His days started early with prayer and purpose. His nights ended with gratitude. He was engaged to a woman who loved him for who he was, not what he had. She met him during a community workshop where he spoke about building an honest career. She said his story inspired her. He smiled when he realized she was talking about the same story that once made him feel small. Across town, Chuka lived a different life. After his arrest, things never returned to normal. He had spent months in detention before being released on bail. His name had been dragged across blogs and social media, his photos used as warnings to others. Even after the noise faded, the stain remained. He tried to start again, to live clean, but nobody trusted him. Landlords refused to rent to him. Employers ignored his applications. His old friends had disappeared into different cities or into deeper crime. He sold his car, lost his apartment, and moved back to his parents' house in shame. Every time he scrolled through social media, he saw the new generation of big boys, younger, bolder, richer. They were repeating the same cycle he once bragged about. He wanted to warn them, to tell them the truth, but pride kept his mouth shut. So he watched in silence as others walked into the same trap he barely escaped. Sometimes he'd take long walks at night, headphones in his ears, mind full of regret. He remembered the first day it all began. The whisper, the temptation, the lie that everyone is doing it. Now he knew the truth. Everyone might do it, but not everyone survives it. One evening, he stumbled on a video online. It was Emeka speaking at a youth conference. His old friends stood on stage, confident, clean, respected. Chuka watched in silence as Emeka told their story, not naming names, but describing every detail of their journey. When Emeka said, "Fast money fades, but dignity lasts forever," Chuka's eyes filled with tears. It was a sentence that cut deeper than any punishment ever could. He sent Emeka a message that night. "Bro, I saw your talk. You spoke well. I'm proud of you." Minutes later, Emeka replied, "Thank you, Chuka. I never stopped praying for you." Chuka smiled, though his heart ached. In that moment, he realized something profound. Redemption doesn't always come with applause. Sometimes it comes quietly, through regret, reflection, and the hope to do better. Months later, Chuka began to rebuild. He started teaching digital marketing to small businesses, using the same skills he once used for fraud. This time, he worked honestly. He earned little, but each naira felt like a step toward peace. He began visiting schools to speak about the dangers of internet fraud. At first, people laughed, calling him the fallen big boy. But over time, they listened, because his scars told a truth that words alone couldn't tell. Chuka and Emeka eventually met again. No expensive cars, no loud music, just two old friends sitting by the roadside, eating suya, laughing like the old days.
no judgment, no pride, just understanding. Emeka said softly, "I'm glad you made it out." Chuka nodded. "I'm glad you stayed true." The night air was calm, and for the first time in years, both of them felt free. Different roads had led them here, but they finally stood on the same ground, a place called peace. Their story became a quiet lesson for anyone who listened, that fast money is never free, that every shortcut hides a price, that slow growth, though painful, always leads to something real. To the young man listening, wondering if dignity still pays, to the student feeling left behind because others are shining too early, to the woman tempted by luxury that comes with lies, remember this: the light that burns too bright often burns out too soon, but the one that grows slowly never fades. Chuka lost time, but found wisdom. Emeka lost speed, but gained peace. And both of them proved that no matter where life takes you, there's always a way back to what's right. Because true success is not in what you have, but in how you earned it. And in the end, the clean road, no matter how long, always leads home.